Hey everyone, I just wanted to do a review on this particular model of Grand Seiko, which is SBGA413, Spring Edition, US exclusive. I think it retails for somewhere around $6,300 in September of 2020, which is right now. I believe it's pretty much sold out everywhere. You might be able to find it in the aftermarket for about $7,000 or above. There's a lot of reviews on this watch. It's a very, very popular model. I believe what they were saying is that this is the most popular Grand Seiko model out there right now at the current moment. That's probably not a limited edition. But I've seen a lot of reviews for this watch, mainly from influencers, but I haven't seen too many reviews from an actual owner. So I just want to kind of talk about, from an owner's perspective, some of the talking points on this watch and what my opinions are of those talking points after having been an owner of this watch for about a good 2 months now. So let's get started. The number one talking point when it comes to this watch is the dial, and mainly the color of the dial. So if you look at the press photos, the dial of this watch has a significant pink tone associated with it. But if you actually look at it right now, you'll notice that it's basically a silver dial, and majority of the time it's a silver dial. I will put I think the thumbnails for this video that I'm going to put is a picture that I took on Instagram of this particular watch, where it really shows off the pink. And what I found out from being an owner of this watch and having worn it for about 2 months now, I think Teddy Baldassar actually kind of said the same thing, which is that majority of the time it's a silver dial, and depending on the circumstances and the light, it will have a pinkish tone, which is true. So I knew that before I purchased it. The thing that I didn't know was that when I bought it, I thought if the dial played with the light, meaning if there was a direct light on the dial, I thought that's when it was going to turn to pink or have a pinkish tone, and that if it was more in a dark, I guess, shadowy environment, that's when it kind of becomes silver or matte gray. And what I'm finding out from being an owner and then having wearing this watch for about 2 months now is actually the opposite. So if the light is directly focusing on the dial, because of the indices and the hands and everything just being so polished, it just turns into a silver dial. You know, just it's like a rapper's watch or something. It just kind of blings all over the place. But when you're still in a daylight, but in a environment where the light is not directly reflecting on the dial, that's when you start seeing the pinkish tone. So I'll put a picture of the photo for this thumbnail for this video that I took for Instagram here. And then what you will see that where I took this photo is in the corner of my living room, where there is a shade. So when there is a shade, the pinkish tone of the dial actually becomes a lot more prominent than when there is direct sunlight with the dial. So people who are actually interested in this watch, thinking that it's going to be just straight up pink, that's not the case. And if you're actually interested in this watch and you're thinking that you're going to be wearing it to the office and you're kind of wondering, hey, when is the pink tone going to come out of this dial? It's going to be like when you're in the office. So it's still daylight. However, there's no direct sunlight that's coming into the dial. That's when you actually kind of see the pinkish tone. So just remember that. The second talking point when it comes to this watch is the fact that it's made out of titanium. So it's, I guess, for some people, they're really into heavy watches. Therefore, the fact that it's very light is not a pro for them. It's actually a con. But for me, it's a significant pro. So if you look at my other video where I talked about purchasing SBGA413, which is another Grand Seiko limited edition, I talked about the fact that I bought that watch knowing that it had a messed up bracelet because I knew I was gonna replace the bracelet anyway. This one, I don't have to worry about replacing the bracelet because it's so light and it feels so comfortable on your wrist. So let me put it on my wrist and kind of talk about why it feels so comfortable. So here it is on my wrist, looking very nice. And I think a couple of people mentioned that, they're actually kind of shocked at how light it is and it doesn't feel like there's anything on your wrist. That's actually not true. There's a watch on your wrist, right? But the total weight of this titanium construction, I would say if you want to know how it kind of feels when you hold it in your hand, I don't know why you would want to know that, but if you just want to kind of know the total weight of it, just take something like another 40 to 41 millimeter watch, but with a leather strap, and just kind of hold it. It feels about the same. Actually, this feels just a little bit lighter, but it feels about the same. Now, if there was an actual bracelet on this watch, like it originally had, then this would be way more significantly heavier, right? But ultimately, when you put it on your wrist, because of the fact that the distribution of the weight, the whole thing is made out of titanium, and then the weight itself is kind of distributed evenly around your waist. Therefore, when it's on your wrist, it feels significantly lighter. It's not as though that you don't know there's a watch on your wrist, but it feels lighter than if you just had a regular watch with a leather strap. Because if you think about, this type of construction, majority of the weight is concentrated here, like 90% of the weight is here. So if you put it around your wrist, you're gonna feel majority of the weight right there on the case. However, with something like this, it just seems to be kind of distributed throughout the whole watch. Therefore, when you wear it, it's super, super comfortable. And frankly, it feels a lot more comfortable than having a leather strap. Therefore, I am tremendously happy with this titanium build. Not only just the fact that it's going to be a lot more durable, but just the fact that it's so much light and it's so much comfortable. So that's talking point number 2. So talking point number 3, when it comes to this watch, is the spring drive movement. So as far as the discussion about whether it's truly an automatic movement and all that type of jazz, I'm just going to leave that to people who are way more qualified to discuss it. As far as just being an owner, I love this movement. I know it's going to be more accurate and all that jazz, but what I really love about this movement is the fact that I don't know if people are really into looking at the sweep of the second hand, but I'm really into that. Therefore, when I look at the sweep, it calms me down tremendously. Now, that might sound a little bit funny to certain people, but just looking at that buttery sweep of the second hand, it's like I just did yoga or something like that. I mean, I don't do yoga, but I would think that it's kind of have a similar feeling to it. It really, really relaxes me. And I don't know the reason as to why it relaxes me, but it's one of the major positive when it comes to this watch. The spring drive, if I had a choice on my next watch, to be either a spring drive or just a high beat or whatever, I will always go for this spring drive because I really like the sweep of the second hand. Now, if that doesn't matter to you, or you're a purist who are who want to say no, that spring drive is not really an automatic movement or a true automatic movement, that's fine and dandy. But I'm just talking about as an owner, what I really appreciate is the titanium build. Talking point number 2, huge positive. Spring drive. Talking point number 3, a gigantic positive for me. Now, a couple other things that people might have talked about, but I haven't really read or heard about it, is that when it comes to the dial, if you're the type of person who really has visibility and readability as the primary things that they look for in a watch, this is definitely not it. Because if you look at the dial, it's a silver dial, shiny indices and second hands and all hour hand and all that jazz. Therefore, when you combine all that, let's say you're in a sunlight, you're not going to be able to read a damn thing. So, you know, if you are getting up there in age, or just have a poor eyesight, or just readability is really, really important to you, you should definitely not consider this watch and move on to something else, because this is, the design of it is really not going to help you out at all. And then the other thing that people talked about that I kind of disagree with, and this is purely subjective, but I call this watch the Parasite of Watches, because if I read the reviews, I listened to some podcasts when they were talking about this watch. I mean, it made it sound like once I looked at it, I was just going to be like, you know, just, I don't know, just having a nonstop orgasm in my pants, because it was just so amazing looking. Now, it's a great looking watch, but it's, you know, it's not that amazing. I mean, it's the best looking watch that I have, but it's not like how they're making it out to be. So the reason that I call it the Parasite of Watches is like Parasite, before I went to go see it, people were just so, you know, over the moon with it, talking about how it changed their life and all that different types of stuff. So when I went in, my expectation was just so high. But when I came out of it, I was just like, that's a good to great movie. But it's nothing like what they were talking about, at least in my opinion. And that's how I kind of feel about this watch. Also, this is very, very photogenic. So in the photos and in the videos, it looks a lot better than in person, in my opinion. It's like a supermodel or something, where you go like, wow, really, you're a supermodel? And then somebody takes a photo of them, you're like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Whatever their bone structure or design is on your face, you just become way, way photogenic when it comes to people taking pictures or on videos or whatever. And this watch is kind of like that. I think it's a beautiful looking watch. It tends to be, whatever design Grand Seiko put into this, it just comes off a lot better in photographs and in videos. So like, I'm looking at the viewfinder and I'm like, damn, that's a good looking watch. Now I'm looking at the watch, you know, away from the viewfinder, I'm like, okay, that's a good looking watch. It's a huge difference. I can't really explain it. So highly photogenic. I don't know if you should expect that when you're going in to take a look at it in real life. And also, let's just temper the expectations a little bit after reading the reviews and people talking about how gorgeous the dial is. It is a gorgeous dial, but I mean, just let's calm down a little bit. And the reason that I'm actually really, really happy with this watch when it comes to aesthetics is that this is one of the very few watches where when I put it around my wrist, it looks a lot better. Not necessarily on my wrist, but just when I look at my reflection. So I can't really qualify that in any way, but when I put this watch around my wrist and I look at my reflection, it just fits me. Again, hard to qualify it. It's just very, very subjective, but there have been watches, like I believe Maxbo chronoscope that I have is one of the most beautiful watches that I have seen, just design-wise and everything. It's not as complicated, but just the way that it's laid out, it's beautiful to me. However, when I put it around my wrist, I just don't feel it the same way. Like, this watch is just perfect for me. So I would say, you know, not necessarily just this watch in general, but if you are trying to look for a watch that's going to cost you a significant amount of money, whatever you consider it to be a significant amount of money is, so it could be 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever it is, if you have the ability to actually go see the watch, not only just to see the watch in person, but to try it on. And not only to just try it on, but try it on and look at yourself in the reflection. I mean, if you have the ability to actually do that, then I would totally say go for it, because looking at the watch is one thing. Number one, looking at the watch in photographs and reviews and videos is one thing. Looking at it in real life is a whole nother thing. Looking at the watch around your wrist is another step above that. And then I think there's another layer, which people don't seem to talk about all that much, and maybe it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me, which is looking at the watch around your wrist with you as the whole package. Like, how does it fit? Like, for example, I love Dodge Challengers. I think it's a great looking muscle car. I personally will not get out of it, like get out of a Dodge Challenger. It just doesn't fit me as a person. If stuff that like doesn't really matter to you, then go ahead, wear whatever you want, drive whatever you want. But for me, I like to kind of make it, I like to have things feel like it's a part of me, or that I kind of belong to it, or that it's just doesn't stand out from or clash with myself, if that makes any sense. So that's enough rambling. If you have any questions about this model, just let me know. But just to summarize, beautiful watch. Majority of the time, it's going to be a silver dial. When it's on the shade, it tends to show off the pinkish hue a lot more than when it's on a direct sunlight. Made out of titanium, super comfortable. That's a huge positive for me. The spring drive movement, the sweep, just mesmerizing. Love it. However, the cons are, if you are really into readability of the time, forget it, move on. If you are thinking that what you're visually going to see in person is going to be equivalent to what you read in the reviews or maybe what you see in photos, I personally don't think it's like that. I think it's just a step down below that. But ultimately, I am super happy with this watch because when I put it around my wrist and I look at myself, it just fits me or whoever I'm trying to portray. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, let me know, leave a comment, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Talk to you later.